Ki te ao whānui, me te moana nui a kiwa, mana ki te o tātou tūpuna ki raro I te koro wai o te rangi Māori e. No mai, haere mai, whakatau mai rā.
Mai te kore ki te pō ki te ao mārama, ti hei mauri ora. Gloria ki te matua nui I te rangi. Nāna nei ngā mea katoa, kei ngā mate o te wiki, o te mārama, o te tau, haere, haere, haere atu rā. Rātau te hunga wairua ki a rātau, mātau te hunga ora ki a mātau. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. E ngā manuhiri tuarangi, ko te reo pōhiri tēnei o Aotearoa ki a koutou. Tomo mai e te hunga o te wao o Amahona. Tauti mai e te iwi o te mātao. Rāhiri mai ngā tamariki o Afrika, o tira haere mai e ngā hoa aroha o te iwi mihingare. Ki tā tātou kaupapa e tū nei. Mena kua ata whakarongo koe ki ngā kupu mihi-mihi, ka rangona I ngā kupu o te wao, o te mātao, a me te wera. He aha e nā kupu, he kupu taiao. He nui te āhuatanga o te taiao ki ngā iwi take o te ao. He whenua taurikua, he pātaka kai, he puna waiora. Nā wai kua karapōtihia ngā maunga whakahi, ngā wai whakaika me ngā waka o te ao, ki te kōrero, o te whakapōkea o te taiao. A kāti, ko te tūmanako ia, ka tahuri anō o tātou whakaaro ki te tua, ki te ako, me pēhea te tiaki tika I a papa tuanuku e takoto nei, aia nei, a haereake nei. Ke aku nui, ke aku rahi, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Ki tiro e ngā iwi te kapu takuringa he tonga tēnei ngā tupuna e poi, e poi, e poi.
Oi Polynesia! Oi takawiri! Taukatu tatu, taukatu tatu, taukatu tatu, kotetou! Tatu tatu taku poi, kārere taku poi, rere tika atu ana kātoki ngā pui, kei reira te toka, kei rangi honga, kei o rimina, ko te toka tēnā, I poua I hoi, te rongo paira e. E waka gloria, te atu I runga rawa kāmau, te rongo ki o te aroa, tēnā ano rā koa unga kura kura, iru ara, I roto ngā iwi kā tupu kā hua e. Titiro e ngā iwi e, te kapu taku ringa e kaunga tēnei ngā atu
I te wā o te mate uruta, ka huri te ao. Tērā etahi, i poroporo akitia o rātou mate, rai ki te rai. Tērā etahi, i poroporo akitia o rātou mate, rorohiko ki te rorohiko. I takahia etahi tikanga, e ora ai te tikanga. I roto i tēnei whenua o Aotearoa, ka tū ngā waka. Ka aukati te rere o ngā poti i runga moana. Ka noho te tangata ki te kāinga. Ahakoa te āhua taumaha o te mate uruta i kitea te ora i roto i te mate. Ka hokia ngā manu ki ona kōhanga. Ka mārama a Tangaroa kia kitea ana tamariki. Ka rangona te hau ora i tēnā o te hau mate. Ka mate kāinga tahi, ka ora kāinga rua. E kōrero ana tēnei whakatauki mō ngā tohu me āta whakarongo e ke ai tātou ki tua. Nō reira, hea ngā kāinga e tohua nei te atua ki a koe. E mōhio ai tātou me inoi. Tēnā. E te atua, tēnei te aue ki a koe. I te kākahutia, te taiao i ngā he me ngā hara o te tangata. E te atua, murua o tātou hara. He oi, whakaorangi a mātou i te kino. Arahina mātou. Kia kitea ngā mate kāinga tahi, kia ora a kāinga rua. Kororia ki tō ingoa tapu, mō ake ake. Āmene.
E tō mātou mata i te rangi, kia tapu tō ingoa, kia tae mai tō rangatiratanga, kia me te atau e pai ai ki runga ki te whenua. Kia rite anō ki tō te rangi, ho mai kia mātou ai nei, e taro mā mātou mō tēnei rā.
Ooh. Pula to you all. I am Winston Harapua, Archbishop Emeritus. Lamentation is God's gift. In an oceanic language, lamentation may be translated as lo'i mata. The first part of the word lo'i refers to uncontrollable tears. The second part of the word mata refers to the face of a person, more especially to the eyes. Lamentation in our moana or oceanic context can be located in the concept of lo'i mata. In John's Gospel, the story of the resurrection begins with Mary Magdalene. In the dark before the dawn, Mary goes alone to the tomb. In every step she takes, Mary's whole being is driven by grief. Would it have been easier to express her lo'i mata alone because others would not understand? When Mary arrives at the tomb, her grief is intensified because the stone of the tomb is removed. In her panic, she runs and not walks to Simon Peter and the disciple whom Jesus loved. Gasping for breath, she tells them that Jesus' body is removed. Straight after hearing the incidents from Mary, Peter and the disciple whom Jesus loved take off to the tomb, leaving Mary behind. Due to difference in age, the disciple who is younger outruns Peter to the tomb. Both investigate in detail according to his own understanding of the story related to them by Mary. They return home with only the news of the empty tomb. Mary again arrives at the tomb. Her loimata is further intensified by the removal of the stone and the absence of the body. Her fear is aggravated as there is no further news from the disciples. As she stands weeping outside the tomb, she stoops to look inside. Behold, something most unusual is happening. Two angels are sitting where the body of Jesus had been laid. They acknowledge the loimata visible in Mary's face. "Woman, why are you weeping?" they asked. Mary's loimata from the depth of her heart burst out. "The body of my Lord is removed." As her energy sips out, she senses somebody also at present. She turns around and sees a figure whom she does not recognize. Jesus, the risen Lord, repeats the same question raised by the angels. He then goes further. "Who are you looking for?" Such profound questions enable Mary to articulate the depth of her heart and vulnerability. For Mary, her loimata is deeper than grief of the brutal death, burial, and removal of her crucified Lord. There was an encounter in Mary's life with Jesus prior to his death. Mary was at the point of no return, wrecking her own life when she met Jesus. She was totally healed. In response to Jesus' second question, "Who are you looking for?" the depth of Mary's heart is revealed. The very source of her loimata is transformed. In her own words, she said, "Tell me where you have put him, and I will go and remove him." Even in her vulnerability, her courage and determination, Mary shines. To such an amazing courage, the risen Lord, at his first appearance after resurrection in John's Gospel, calls her name, Mary. At this very moment, Mary's loimata of grief is transformed into joy. Loimata or lamentation prompts Mary how to be fully human. She helps you and me to be more human. Loimata is God's gift, our taonga to the Anglican Communion and to the world. Central to loimata is the uniqueness of celebrating our identity, our turanga waiwai in Maori, and treasure our guardianship of such a gift. It is a taonga. No one can take it away from us. It is given to be shared with God, the whole creation, including humanity.
Sangha Ti hei mauri ora, ki te whai au ki te ao mārama. He kuroria ki te atua, he maungorongo ki te whenua, he whakaaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. Tahuri te kei o te mihi ki te atua, koia te timatanga, koia hoki te whakamutunga. Nā ona ringa e hanga ngā mea katoa o te ao. A ka kuroria I runga I te ingoa, o te matua, o te tama, me te wairua tapu. Āmine.
Indigenous Māori and Pacific peoples understand creation is inherently unified. There is a profound connection among all that exists with creation. Māori recognize this relationship as kaitiakitanga. Kaitiakitanga is a taonga and a whanaungatanga that exists between humans and the other than human world. At the heart of the term kaitiakitanga is whanaungatanga, the interrelatedness of all creatures within all species. Plants and birds, rivers, lakes and sea, mountains and hills, animals and insects, all have value in themselves and are to be respected and honoured. In this way, kaitiakitanga respects the mana of all living things and seeks to uphold all their mauri with tapu, aroha, and manaki.
Mana refers to spiritual power. If a forest, lake, or coastal area has mana, it will hold an abundance of life in birds, in fruit, and fish. Kaitiakitanga affirms that respect for the care and harvesting of these resources and enables people to receive from the land and sea in a cycle of mutual reciprocity. Mauri literally means the essence of life that exists within every aspect of creation. As just one part of the created order, we are called to honour the mauri and the mana in all that exists, human and other than human.
Tamu or tapu refers to the sacred and in practical terms relates to the ways of ensuring our resources are replenished and restored. This is done through offering aroha and manaki by following the maramataka, kore hihika, kore kaimomo, and having a rahui. Tapu ensures that our relationship with the earth breathes in and out sacredness through our spirituality. Our totemic relationship with our mountains, rivers, birds, fish, trees, root crops is integral to our identity as kaitiakitanga. As kaitiaki, we are responsible for the sustenance and maintenance of creation.
In this way, the concept of kaitiakitanga positions human beings in creation, not as supreme masters over the earth community, but as interdependent members of the earth community. Perceiving ourselves as interdependent members of creation requires us to broaden our gaze beyond our anthropocentric concerns to include consideration of all living entities in everything we do. It asks us to offer aroha and manaki to all other living entities.
Although the Indigenous concept of kaitiakitanga certainly predates the arrival of missionaries and Western Christianity, there are significant resonances between kaitiakitanga and Christian concepts of relationality within creation.
As Christians, we affirm that human existence is intrinsically and inescapably inseparable from God. Life without God is simply impossible. God is the source of our existence, our beginning and our ending. In the same way that our existence is profoundly dependent upon God, so too are we utterly dependent upon the earth and Earth's other than human community. The depth of this interconnectedness is seen in Genesis 2, where God creates the human being from earth's soil and breathes into humanity te Aotearoa. It is the very same soil and breath from which God creates the animals and birds. There is whanaungatanga, or kinship, between these creatures and the human being. They originate from Earth's fertile soil. Earth is their common ancestor and God their creator. It is to the earth our bodily forms will return when our cycle of life is complete.
It is in the same text that human beings are instructed to serve and preserve the earth. We are imaged here as created beings, formed from the earth, animated by God, and entrusted by God to serve and honour all creation. As interdependent whānau and members of the earth community, we serve and in turn are served in a reciprocal pattern of mutual custodianship. To serve and honour earth in this way is to recognise and respect the intrinsic worth of all other than human life. It is to see creation as God does and to affirm that that is very good. And as we see with the concepts of mana and mauri, to recognise the inherent worth of all that exists, human and other than human, results in an attitude of restraint that respects each created entity in itself, for itself.
This attitude of restraint, or rahui, calls to mind the sacred, set-apart time that is Sabbath. As God rests in the Sabbath moments, so all creation, human and other than human, rests with God. This consecrated season that is sacred time and space enables healing and restoration for all God's creation, breaking the pattern of unfettered progress and unquestioning consumption of Earth's resources. It is a reminder of the imperative for justice so that all creation might flourish and have abundant life.
In a world where relentless ecological degradation and widespread racism deny fullness of life to so many, we are called to expose and confront systems that silence, exploit, oppress, and abuse. As the sea roars, the mountains tremble, the land moans, the stones cry out, and creation groans. So we add our human voices to the cry of the earth community, resisting oppression and demanding justice and restoration.
In practical and tangible terms, justice and restoration for Māori and Pacific peoples is realised through tino rangatiratanga, or sovereignty and self-determination. This includes the ability to care for and protect God's creation, exercising kaitiakitanga, ensuring the physical and spiritual well-being of all.
At the heart of the term ecology lies the Greek word oikos, meaning house, home, or household. Ecological well-being is weaved into the well-being of our home, the whole inhabited earth. The flourishing of one is impossible without the flourishing of all. It's time to get our house back in order.
Toi tū te marae o tāne, toi tū te marae o Tangaroa, toi tū te iwi.
E ki koe o whaata
Malolele in Bulavinaka. My name is Falakitauka Aotearoa, and I'm a member of the Anglican Diocese of Polynesia. I come from Fiji and from Tonga. This is a story of a journey of hope, a story by the young people of the Anglican Diocese of Polynesia. This story is called God's Loimata, our oikos. Our oikos, or our household, our home, is this vast Pacific Ocean that we call the Moana. This vast Pacific Ocean is so vast that we can include all of the continents of the earth, and we can still find space in our ocean. Our ocean comprises some 25,000 islands, 10 million people with some 19% of the world's existing languages, contains the richest diversity of coral reefs on the earth. Territorial waters covers some 17% of the planet. And if you had a tuna sandwich yesterday, chances are that tuna came from the Pacific Ocean, as we provide 60% of the global tuna catch. We are stewards of this gift of God, God's creation, God's people, pristine environments, and this place and this ocean, its environment is what we call home. In 2017, the church, the young people of our church, underwent a training offered by the University of the South Pacific on community integrated vulnerability assessments, using a toolkit that also used geo-satellite imaging to be able to plot the vulnerable areas and the vulnerable spots in our community. In 2018, the Tongan communities and this particular parish of All Saints Anglican Church in Tonga had the opportunity to implement their learnings from the training. Tropical Cyclone Gita hit Tonga in February 2018. In the preparation for the cyclone, the young people got together and implemented a pre-cyclone vulnerability assessment where they identified the elderly, the widows, the single mothers, the vulnerable, the infrastructures that were vulnerable to strong winds, flood-prone areas, and they identified the need to help the elderly and the widows. So they came together, they collected some $300. And out of those $300, they bought what was enough for 10 packs for 10 widows and elderlies in the community. These packs consisted of candles, biscuits, 2 tin fish, and some matches. The young people went about distributing these basic necessities to our elderly couples and our single mothers and our widows. They went about doing their task and their role and their responsibilities. But what the elderly people gave them, what the single mothers gave them in return, was a sense of gratitude, but also a sense of empowerment that what they were doing mattered, and what they were doing was important to these elderly people and these single mothers. They were part of a community. They were part of the oikos. Tropical cyclone came, Tropical Cyclone Gita damaged Tonga, and the young people did the assessment of the damages in the areas that they covered. They went about quickly cleaning up the communities, cleaning up the houses, pulling down the broken branches, and also in the process, they drafted a report about the damages in their communities. They submitted this report to the partners, and the partners, in their appeals, were able to collect enough to bring to Tonga. So what started off with $300 became 2 containers worth of building materials and tools, together with prepositioned supplies to be able to supply these emergency and necessity packs to some 40 families in the 4 Episcopal unit parishes in Tonga. So what started off as 1 parish, now with a gift and with the training and with the partnership with our overseas partners, we were able to provide for 40 families in 4 parishes of the Episcopal unit of Tonga. Such was the impact of this journey that the General Synod in 2018 adopted a motion from the Tikanga Maori and the Tikanga Pacifica, calling for a framework to enhance the resilience of the church towards climate change and disasters. And in that motion, it called for the creation of a climate change commissioner for the church. This climate change commissioner was to be driven by and led by the constellation of stars, or a constellation of priorities. And in this constellation of priorities, theological education on climate change was most important, advocacy around climate change, research around disaster preparedness, around climate resilience, partnerships, also the issue of climate displacement, and more importantly and ironically, access to water in this vast ocean that we call the Moana. Such was the impact of their story and their experience that the Diocese of Lincoln invited them to present their story to the conference, to the Water of Life conference, in which these young people, these very young people that underwent the training, went through the disasters of Tropical Cyclone Gita, learned the lessons and implemented the plans. They were able to go to Lincoln and tell that story to the world. Our story is about building resilience in our communities. In the future, we want to map our vulnerabilities, future-proof our assets, develop simple and clear plans, train our priests in disaster preparedness, but also raise funds to be able to cater for future disasters. So much like Mr. Lihati here, sitting down on his chair, knee-deep in water, beside his house that was blown down in Tropical Cyclone Gita. Our responsibility is to cater for our vulnerable. Our responsibility and our culture will continue to remind us that we are the guardians of God's lo'imata, God's tears, our moana, our ocean. As reflected by Archbishop Emeritus Winston, Mary's tears turned from tears of sorrow to tears of joy, a sense of resilience that in her decision to step up through her vulnerability, God reached out to her as a child. Much like our young people, like Mary, our young people have taken that bold step, using their vulnerability to be empowered, to become proud, resilient, passionate guardians of our ocean, God's lo'imata, our moana. Thank you.